Such an incredibly fun day to finally get these discus. Let's talk about that when we come back. Hey everyone, George here and welcome back to the channel. So we're going to be talking about this discus tank that I finally got put together. It's been 2 years since I started the process of putting this tank together. Now it has been 2 years because I wanted to season this tank really well. I don't believe that discus fish should go in a tank that is not well seasoned. So that might be a little bit long for most of you, but I just did not have a comfort zone with dealing with that particular species of fish. I have never worked with them before, and I wanted to make sure that I had a tank that was extremely stable and well seasoned, and that's what we have here. Now, there are 5 discus fish in here. Not a one of them to be found, of course, because I'm on camera, but they're in here and they're hiding in these plants, and that is just typical because they've only been in here less than 2 weeks, and they're not used to me being around. They're coming out a little bit more and more as the days go by, but they're just not real aggressive about being out. If you go to feed them, of course, that's a whole different thing. They're eating very well, and there's no fighting going on. There was a little pecking order going on at first, but that was normal behavior, and that has all dissipated, and things are really going well. So we're going to be talking about this tank today. We're going to be talking about some extremely important things that if you're going to do discus fish, you are going to need 4 things. You are going to need preparation. You are going to need to learn how to be able to deal with frustration, aggravation, and the number one thing is patience. So we're going to talk about all of that stuff, and we're going to talk about where we are today with this particular tank and what the long-term outlook is for this tank and these particular fish. Stick with me. Thank you for joining me today. We'll be right back. So I am very, very excited about having these discus fish in this tank finally. It has been a long process getting to this point, and I want to talk about that a little bit because there were a few mistakes that were made early on with this tank that I want to talk to you about so that you don't make these same mistakes. If you ever are thinking about re-scaping a tank, there's a couple of things you need to keep in mind when you do that, because you can easily, I don't care how good you are or how good you think you are at this, I mean, there's always things that we can learn and do better. And I learned some really valuable lessons putting this together. Now, this tank is about 2 years old, so it has been constantly running for about 2 years. Now, it hasn't always looked the same, and it has not always had the same stock in it. There have been some changes made along the way, and I want to talk to you a little bit about that because one of these changes was a near disaster, and this tank just almost didn't happen because of it. But it started out as an angelfish tank. I had always wanted an angelfish tank, and something that could be a showpiece kind of tank in my family room. My family doesn't really want fish tanks all over my house. In particularly my spouse, who enjoys my hobby but doesn't enjoy it so much that she wants tanks all over my house. But she did agree to have some angelfish in a really nice tank in our family room. It was sort of a divider between the kitchen and the great room area. But like I said, this was originally set up to be an angelfish tank, and it was for about a year. Now, I want to tell you a little bit about what is the hardware here. This is a Fiji cube, or not a, yeah, it's a Fiji cube is the name of it. It's not actually a cube tank. I don't know why they call themselves Fiji cube when they make all kinds of different tanks, but this is a Fiji cube Peninsula, and it is all 40 gallons. And basically, it does have an all-in-one filtration system in the back. You have the water sock on one chamber, and then in the center chamber you do have your filtration, which is ceramic, carbon, and sponge. And then, of course, the third chamber is your pump area, where you can also put a heater, which I use a specific digital heater for all of my tanks. It's a brand that I will put down in the description area. I have done videos on that. I'll put a video on that particular heater. If you're interested in it, you can go down the bottom and take a look. But anyways, for a year, this tank basically was an angelfish tank. Neon tetras, cardinal tetras. I had a cleanup crew basically of some corydoras, pleco, a couple of Siamese algae eaters, and a bunch of autocinkless. Don't even remember how many, but if you're going to keep autocinkless, keep them in a group, because they do a lot better if you have them in a group of, say for a tank that size, 7 to 10 would be a really good number to keep them in. Anyways, long story short is for about a year, as I said, this was an angelfish tank. And I got kind of bored with it. I really didn't like the scape that I had done in it. I wasn't satisfied with that scape. It was one of those things where I kind of looked at it a lot and said, there were things that I could have done better. And, I just wasn't sure that I liked it and was considering re-scaping it. But at the time, like I said, it was an angelfish tank. And as it turned out, as these angels matured, they started to pair up. And I ended up with 2 breeding pairs and a 5th wheel, a lone whatever. And I ended up with a lot of problems because of that. Basically, what was happening is the females were laying eggs and protecting those eggs constantly. There was always battles going on in the tank because of this. So it was one of those things where I just didn't want to deal with all the aggression that was going on. In fact, sometimes they were going as far as to kill off some of my tetras if they even came into the area. And so anyways, long story short is I did decide that that tank had to go in the current form. So what I did basically was decide that I was going to go ahead and re-scape this thing. And I decided that about Christmas of last year. And with COVID, a lot of things were hard to get. Plants were hard to get. Fish were really hard to find in a lot of places. And also, just hardscape in general. Not a lot to choose from and not a lot of places open really to get stuff. Now, lucky for me, I keep a lot of this stuff on hand, and I have tons of plants that I always have available. I have a whole section of my garage that is filled with hardscape, rock, wood, all kinds of different things that, where it's easy for me to come up with the ability to re-scape something. Anyways, what I ended up doing in December of last year was taking the 2 pairs of angels out of there and completely re-scaping this tank. I took it all the way down to the substrate. There was nothing left in there. Now, as I said, there's a filtration system in this in the back, as I said, but I had added also an aqua 200 to this just for some supplementary filtration to keep things really in good condition. And doing that really made the tank just absolutely pristine, crystal clear. Now, as I've always said, clear water doesn't mean clean water, so you have to be careful with that. There's a lot of times people believe that because their water looks crystal clear that it is in good condition, when in fact that can be a big trick. And you have to do those water changes. Now, again, I was doing 2 50% water changes a week, and that was the first year, and then I got it down to approximately 2 30% water changes by the time I started the process of re-scaping the tank. Now, the thing that I did wrong was I took everything out and I was going to repurpose it. I was going to reuse the plants, reuse the rock, reuse the wood. Not necessarily in this tank, but use them for other tanks so nothing would go to waste. And I had plenty of different materials to choose from. I did end up using all of the plants that were in the tank back into the same tank. I just had put some new stone in, some galaxy stone, and some really nice pieces of wood. Manzanilla, I think, is the type of wood that's in here, and sort of made an island, or not an island, but a peninsula-shaped area where all of the plants came out of, and then tapered off at the end of the tank. And it turned out really beautiful. I was really happy with it and excited to have this beautiful tank. Well, again, I got bored and decided, I'm gonna do a discus tank. I hadn't done discus. I was intimidated by the idea of doing discus, but I thought, you know what? This tank is so well seasoned and everything. I'm gonna go ahead and do a discus tank here. So within a couple of days of re-scaping this thing, I was getting ready to do this discus tank, and if you were watching my videos, you could see where I was talking about this a lot. What happened is I was not paying attention to the fact that I did 2 things that were major mistakes when I re-scaped this tank. Number one, I took it all the way down to the substrate and did 100% water change. That probably would have been something I would have survived had I just done that. What I did basically was just add 2 inches of substrate on top of the old, so there was lots of beneficial bacteria in that substrate down below that. But the thing that I did that was the biggest mistake is I left the filtration in the back of the tank and the chambers all alone. I didn't mess around with it, but I took that aqua 200 and I completely cleaned it from top to bottom. Now, between the 100% water change, covering up the old substrate with 2 inches more of new substrate, and cleaning that aqua out 100%, I absolutely destroyed the cycle in this tank. And I found out rather quickly, because when I added the fish back in a few days later, I had taken them out of the quarantine tank. They were, within a day or two, the tetras and the cardinals were dying 2-3 a day. My angels were acting really funny. They were acting as though they were gasping for breath. They were hiding all the time. They were not eating. So I knew something was wrong. So I checked around a little bit and realized really quickly that the 100% water change and the messing around with that aqua really had screwed up the cycle in this tank. Now that's something that I can fix, but I didn't need to lose a bunch of fish in the process. I should have known better than to do that. So any of you that are re-scaping a tank and you're doing 100% water change, don't put fish and stuff back in there. Let that tank recycle itself. It won't take long, about a week or so, putting some stability in there by Chem to help it along. You're going to have a really nice cycled tank. Anyways, I decided to go ahead and get these discus fish, and I had 5 of them on hold. A friend of mine had at his store, and I ended up finding out that they sold those out from under me. So we ordered 5 more, and as you saw in the video, if you follow me, a couple of videos back, what we ended up having was a situation where he had to order me 5 more. 4 of them turned out to be great, and there weren't any problems with them, but the 5th one was looking a little bit iffy, so I asked him to kind of quarantine that one a little bit longer before I finally added them. So about a week and a half, I've had these fish in here now. The tank is beautiful. I added that 5th fish in about a week ago. I had to wait about another 3 or 4 days before we were ready to bring that fish home. Anyway, bottom line is I love this tank. It's beautiful. Please leave your comments down below. If you're dealing with discus and you are new at this, with dealing with discus, and you have some ideas or comments you'd like to make, please leave them down below. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and please share with your friends. And again, use that bell up at the top there to keep track of any new videos that I might have coming out. But anyways, thank you for joining me today. Thanks for your support. Loving the tank. I'm going to keep you updated on what goes on with these fish over the next couple of months, and we'll do an update at some point here. And we may even go to a bigger tank at some point, but that's a story for down the road. Anyways, thank you so much for joining me today. We'll see you on the next one.